Previously on the history of GOAT, we looked at the end of the historical GOAT format era with the 2005 World Championship, the transitioning SJCs, and the release of the 2005 collectible tins and Cybernetic Revolution. It's a great video, so watch it if you haven't. The golden age of Yu-Gi-Oh! Has officially ended, yet what would eventually happen could only be described as the return of the king. So how did it begin? And what did it cause? This is the history of GOAT. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a constantly evolving game. The GOAT Control era's finality was inevitable. Future formats came and went like Reaper, Gladiator, and Edison, but people don't forget times in the game, times in their lives, and look back with nostalgia. And technically speaking, the cards are still around to play with, even if not in an official tournament capacity. Thus, when the game starts to get stale, frustrating, or you've simply gotten out of the loop, retro formats are a safe place to go back to. Much like the Janjo zone, haha. It's tough to pinpoint when exactly duelists started to flock back home, but a great guess would be with the creation of the online simulator Dueling Network in May 2011. This was during the final year of 5Ds, and soon to be the first full year of Zexal. As the fan-made web-based simulator would gain popularity, so would people trying out the slower formats of old within the early years of the network. After all, it was free, and even playing Paper Goat would be cheaper given how a majority of the cards have exited the contemporary meta. A lot of people weren't fans of the Xyz summon, let alone synchro summoning when they rolled around in late 2008. I was certainly one of them. Since the summer of 2005, we saw an emergency ban list, Airblade Turbo, Tier 0 Teledad, Dark Strike OTK, and 2012's Wind-Up Loop certainly didn't help alleviate those who were already on edge with Yu-Gi-Oh! GOAT wasn't met with overbearing cards or degenerate strategies. As we've discussed in the series, it was a Wild West period that ended with relatively fun control matchups. A favorable format combined with growing player frustration, especially with the March 2012 list that did not go over smoothly, would ultimately cause the creation of historical formats. Turns out people didn't like it when Konami actively avoided hitting the problematic top decks and hit lower tier decks instead. In June 2012, in response to Konami's lack of reparation via a May article explaining their reasoning, a Duelist Grounds user created an official April 2005 GOAT format thread since the contemporary game was actively pushing people away. A format of staples and not archetypes. An era where power creep wasn't an issue. The disillusioned duelists would react quite positively to this proposition of GOAT, named after one of the most played cards in the format. Scapegoat. I suppose Thousand Eyes lock format didn't roll off the tongue. All it took was a strong community plus a quality metagame and a dash of Duel Monsters nostalgia to create this preferred cocktail. When it comes to the card pool, GOAT was distinguished to be pre-Cybernetic Revolution, with the last release being the 2005 collectible tins, thus also including the Nightmare Troubadour promo cards. Yes, originally the format did have cards like Panther Warrior, Silent Magician, and Exarion Universe legal. While most of these cards wouldn't have any impact on the meta, Exarion was an exception. This card was powerful given its strong piercing effect against GOAT tokens, and its high stats meant it was Tsukiyomi proof. It certainly was main deck worthy, which raises an issue. What exactly is GOAT format? Because as we've tackled already, the tins would be legal on release on September 5th. But this also was when Cybernetic Revolution was legal, with one final SJC event before the October 2005 list. It makes sense to cut CRV considering the power shift of the set. Back then, it was easy to say everything up to the next set is the format. Yet from a historical perspective, not only is it amorphous, it's not accurate to what the card pool was back then. One could even bring up the conversation on if the Lost Millennium even belongs. There were a number of SJCs before the Rocky Core set like SJC Los Angeles and Houston, plus the UK Nationals. The thing is, the major events like the US Nationals, Worlds, and everything that the format would sift into would be post-TLM. And the set didn't include many impact cards as we've discussed in the series. Brain Control, Death's Wombat maybe, that was roughly it. There would be some who would argue that GOAT should include CRV given SJC Boston. At the end of the day, the small community needs a standardized list rather than splitting up the player base. Cyber Goats was scarcely part of the April 2005 list, and the power level increase with cards like Cyber Dragon, the Cyber Fusions, DDM, and Magical Explosion would absolutely change the format from what duelists were originally fond of, as much as I would love more hero support in GOAT. And if you're enjoying this video and want to support the channel more than simply liking and subscribing, consider to join my Patreon for as little as $2 a month. It goes a long way to help the longevity of the Janjo zone. Over the early revival years of GOAT, another sentiment would linger due to trying to define what the format truly is. That thought would be the legalization of the tins. Exarion GOAT is argued due to the fact that 1. It was the last release before the new set, and 2. Some shops had access to the tins early, a similar tale to Airblade Turbo. And why not play it? It was a great card, and it wasn't as busted as Cyber Dragon would come to be. The Perovic build would be the GOAT deck during the revival period, especially in 2014. Exarion just dealt with so many cards like Scapegoat, Tsukuyomi, Kaiku, Asura Priest, Air Knight Parshath, and replaces suboptimal monsters like Enraged Battlelocks and DD Assailant given Exarion's chaos-friendly Dark attribute. Simply put, Exarion simplified the format in an arguably worse way than the format the people once remembered. Due to this, back in April 2015, the duelist Alan C. Pennington would write an article called A Treatise Regarding Exarion Universe that would argue cutting out Exarion of the observed format. There would be a strong debate on both sides, given the already unanimous acceptance of Exarion. But ACP was arguing the longevity of GOAT's health, questioning the status quo, expressing the core values of the Golden Age, and proving why the card makes GOAT less diverse. This breakdown would ultimately lead to the modern era where Exarion Universe and the tin promos are no longer legal, with the April 2005 format being defined by ways of SJC Indianapolis in August 2005, the event prior to the World Championship, which also means the Nightmare Troubadour cards are illegal as well. Rip Rocket Warrior and Magician Circle. The adoption was slow, but surely, remaining a contentious topic from time to time. In 2016, Dueling Network would get shut down, only to be replaced by Dueling Book in February 2017. Upon this new yet familiar simulator, the GOAT format lobby would officially bar Exarion from entering the club. Since then, the GOAT format community has remained strong as one of the retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Pillars. They would have bountiful in-person events like the numerous GOAT Grand Prix and their own World Championships starting in 2020. And the 2024 champion, Anthony Alvarado, a previous historical GOAT format SJC champion. Konami themselves would even recognize it as part of their Time Wizard formats. No Exarion in all. That said, the format refused to remain the same as it did 20 years ago. With such a heavy fan base, meta calls and card theory alongside format retrospection naturally cause a shift. Due to the 2020 pandemic, retro formats saw a surge in popularity, which only added upon format discovery. The famous GOAT Control deck that was once viewed as the premier deck would eventually fall back in favor of the Chaos Turbo deck, a much faster, more aggressive, and equally consistent strategy. New cards that were once overlooked were re-evaluated and played, like Trap Dust Shoot, which players originally saw as a worse than Liquid duo, and Thunder Dragon to facilitate discard plays like Graceful Charity and Raigeki Break to lead to Chaos Monsters. Though rulings and erratas of old would still apply, like Sinister Serpent, Necro Valley, and Royal Oppression. Suddenly, GOAT decks had a much tougher time keeping up in this modern era, let alone duelists playing a heavier variety of decks like Chaos Control, Reasoning Gate Turbo, Panda Burn, and 2025's popular Jirai Gumo deck, which is ironic that a format named after the once top deck is now in a lower tier than before. Too late to call this Chaos Turbo format now. And all this variety is in part to Exarion leaving room for said experimentation. Pick your poison, I suppose. The history of GOAT is a rich one that was more than just a day, a month, or even a year. It was a love that spanned 20 years and going thanks to player support. I hope this limited series was able to express everything the April 2005 format did for the game and the revolution of retro formats as a whole. Considering there might not be an Edison format or hat format if it wasn't for Konami tripping up in 2012 and the fans packing up their bags and returning to the past. For as true as day, it was bound that an adventurer would appear and uncover the treasures of the tomb and reveal the hieroglyphs of 4 GOAT tokens.